On this episode of RevHang, Ben and I talk about the IndyCar race in Toronto, the two IndyCar races in Ohio, and the French Grand Prix. Let's do it. Hello everybody and welcome to RevHang. I'm your host Nathan Nevue, and alongside me today is my fellow gearhead and co-host Ben Bagley. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing good. I'm hunkering down for this heat wave that's about to hit us this week.
Yeah, we're about to get kind of slammed. Luckily, I am moving to a different location soon, and we'll have AC in that new spot, so I'm looking forward to that.
Big upgrade.
Yeah, it's a must-have nowadays. All of these heat
really
waves.
Is. Yeah, we seem to be getting more and more of those.
Yeah, they're becoming more common. They're happening every summer now, it seems, when they didn't really used to all that often like this. But it's happening kind of everywhere, actually. Like, we'll talk about that a lot today. A lot of places around the world are really hot, and that's affecting racing as well as day-to-day life.
Yeah, although everybody's talking about how hot the French GP was, and they're saying, like, oh yeah, it's like, didn't they say it was like 35 degrees C on the broadcast? And Granted, I had to look it up for the exact temperature, but 77, 80 degrees, that would be a nice day here.
I think it's a little warmer than that. Hold on.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm going to look this up. 30, because I thought 35 was like 90. 30, no, it was like 32 C, right?
Oh, no.
No, it was about 90. But about yeah, 90? It's still not too bad. It's warmer here right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's supposed to get up into the hundreds this week, so hunker down if you're hanging out in the valley.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, let's talk about some racing. We've got 3 IndyCar races to go through today, so we'll start there. Last Sunday, we had the Honda Indy Toronto in Toronto, Canada. This is a street circuit. We're one of the shortest street circuits on the calendar. Laps were under a minute, so definitely short track in terms of street tracks. Like, usually they're pretty short, but that's ridiculously short.
Yeah, and it's been a while since we've seen this track. Last time was pre-COVID. Canada really shut down. So that was, 2018, 2019?
2019, I think, was the last time we were in Canada, yeah. So
we have a lot of rookie drivers who've never seen this track before.
Yeah, rookies and even people who have been in the sport for a couple years might not have seen this track. It's really tight, really bumpy, because it is on just these streets of Toronto. Like, there's stoplights on the track. It's kind of wild.
Stoplights, manhole covers, and textile clothes.
Yeah. So it's good to be back in Toronto, I'm sure, for IndyCar. I know a lot of Canadian fans. There's a lot of Canadian racing fans. They kind of have their own little passionate group up there. So sure, they were happy to see racing back in Canada in the form of IndyCar and Formula One this year. But without further ado, let's just go through the top 10 in qualifying to give you some context for the race. In first place on pole position was Colton Herta, followed by Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden. In fourth place was Alexander Rossi, followed by David Malukas and Scott McLaughlin. In seventh place was Callum Ilott, followed by Felix Rosenqvist, Marcus Ericsson, and Christian Lundgaard, rounding out the top 10.
Colton Herta with another screaming qualifying position. Luckily, he was able to follow through this race.
For sure. Yeah, he did not win, unfortunately, but he still got a great result, I think, placing second. But to get on pole here was definitely an accomplishment, considering this is very much one of Scott Dixon's best tracks. And Scott Dixon has won so many races and has won in Toronto so many times that it's probably a pretty daunting opponent to take on.
Yeah, he really showed it this race, too.
For sure, yeah, he controlled the entire race with pretty much no problem, but let's just get into that. At the beginning of the race, Takuma Sato at the back of the field got squeezed into the wall and damaged his car. He pulled to the side of the track, not even making about half a lap, and that was it. Full course yellow came out. I don't think anybody pit yet because, I mean, it was the first lap, so there's really no point.
Yeah.
But on the restart, Scott Dixon took an early lead. And there was a sweatshirt that ended up on the track somehow.
Infamous.
Yeah, a maroon sweatshirt. I don't know how it ended up there. If it got thrown over the fence, like, I don't see any other way. But yeah, it got ran over several times, and was just getting dragged all over the track for pretty much the entire race. I was actually really surprised that they didn't throw a caution for it.
It completed more laps of the race than Sato.
That is true. The sweatshirt did complete more laps than Takuma Sato. Not ideal for for the Japanese driver getting beaten by a piece of clothing. But yeah, it kind of just laid on the track, sometimes on the racing line, sometimes not. It's definitely a big hazard because if that gets clogged in a brake duct, that's somebody's race over. That's an instant DNF.
Yeah, although I think funnier than the sweatshirt itself being on the track was more the commentators were so interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They really spun a narrative that got me really invested in what this sweatshirt was doing.
Yeah, that was pretty funny, and they just kept coming back to it and showing shots of it. And then one of the cars, I forget which car it was, but one of the cars actually picked it up and had it on the end of its front wing for a lap or two until it ripped itself off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a little bit of a track hazard that never really got taken care of. But anyway, Dalton Kellett, kind of early on in the race, had an engine failure and was forced to retire. Roman Grosjean had a really good race. He was definitely showing his pace in that he was racy and was willing and able to get his elbows out and make some moves up kind of in the front middle of the field. So definitely good to see him putting in the effort and getting that result.
Yeah, he's had kind of a mixed season. So It was nice to see a little bit of aggression that we saw a lot of last year on his debut.
Yep. On lap 45, Felix Rosenqvist and Alexander Rossi made contact, forcing Rossi into the wall and ending his race. This one was, I would say, it was hard. I mean, I think it was Felix Rosenqvist's fault, I guess, if we're putting the blame on somebody. It was hard racing. There was a lot of wheel banging in that corner in particular where Rossi ended up in the wall. So Rosenqvist didn't end up getting a penalty or anything. It was just kind of declared a racing incident. But Rossi was definitely not happy as he lost control of the steering wheel as he got hit. So he really didn't have a chance to save the car, and that ended his race. And he's had some rough luck the last few races.
Oh man, yeah. He can be considered the cause of some bad luck for some of his teammates in past races.
That is true.
Yeah, it was on such a tight street circuit. I mean, sometimes there's simply no place for you to go if a driver makes an aggressive move, and it just so happened that Rossi was the guy on the other end of that. So it was unfortunate, but at least it wasn't, something that ended up in a penalty or something worse.
Yeah. On lap 56, a full course yellow was called for debris in the form of large chunks of concrete on the track. The cars they put so much force on the road. They were literally ripping chunks of concrete out of the street and tossing them across the racing line.
Yeah. Although that's nothing to say if Toronto is anything like any other big city I've driven through. My Ford Taurus will rip chunks of concrete out of the street in a lot of places. It's more an indictment on the city than anything. So yeah, those are some big chunks of concrete too.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the street or if it was just the cars being that insanely powerful. But regardless, yeah, it's not. You don't want to see those big giant rocks basically on the track where the cars are basically aiming. That's just a big accident waiting to happen. So they threw the full course yellow, which I think was a good call. I was actually surprised that they didn't red flag the race to repair the road, because there were now these big potholes on the corner. But, you know, that's kind of how IndyCar rolls. They just kind of send it.
They just take it as it comes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It adds the entertainment to have a continuously variable course as the racing goes on.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about IndyCar is they just let people race, and sometimes chaos happens, and that's just how it goes. So
It makes for an entertaining race, if nothing else.
for sure, it doesn't feel all controlled and, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to say what I'm thinking here, but IndyCar definitely feels more not unregulated, but
I know what you're trying to...
you know, yeah, I think everybody
There's
knows
a
what I'm
word
trying
for
to
it,
say.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I remember the word, I'll just shout it out in the middle of you talking.
Okay, sounds good. They'll let you bend the rules a little bit. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
But anyway, towards the end of the race, we had some good fighting between Polo and Ericsson. They were banging wheels kind of late into the race in the same spot as Rosenqvist and Rossi, actually. Fighting for 7th place. Looks like Ericsson ended up winning that fight. And then also towards the end of the race, Kyle Kirkwood and Jimmy Johnson got together on lap 60, which unfortunately ended Kyle Kirkwood's race. Jimmy Johnson was able to continue, but I think he was a lap down after that.
Yeah.
So that was that race. Let's go through the results real quick. In first place was Scott Dixon, followed by Colton Herta and Felix Rosenqvist on the podium. 4th through 10th was Graham Rahal, Marcus Ericsson, Alex Palou, Simon Pagenaud, Christian Lundgaard, Scott McLaughlin, and Joseph Newgarden. 11 through 15 was Pato O'Ward, David Malukas, Rinus VeeKay, Callum Ilott, and Will Power. And then 16 through 21 was Romain Grosjean, Helio Castroneves, Devlin DeFrancesco, Jack Harvey, Connor Daly, Jimmy Johnson. And then we had 4 DNFs, and it was Kyle Kirkwood, Alexander Rossi, Dalton Kellett, and Takuma Sato.
Yeah, that whole race is kind of a fever dream for me. I watched it at like 2 a.m. on a Thursday night because I couldn't fall asleep. And I woke up at like noon the following day, and I definitely remembered that I watched it, but I had to go back and rewatch some of the highlights just to remember what exactly happened.
Yeah, there's no shame in that. I have the same thing when we have F1 races at 4 a.m. You just kind of like wake up, watch the race, and go back to bed, and then wake up again. You're like, did that actually happen?
You're not actually watching these live, are you?
Huh?
You watch the F1 races live?
Oh yeah, I watch every F1 race live.
Oh my, this completely changes everything. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah?
How do you do that?
Well, it helps that I get up at 5:30 a.m. every day to go to work anyway.
Oh.
So if most of the races here are at 6 a.m., so it works out actually pretty well, and it doesn't interrupt my sleep schedule. In fact, it keeps me on my sleep schedule rather than me sleeping till noon on the weekends.
That's incredible.
Yeah. But the 4 a.m. race is like Baku, and I think Japan is going to be at like midnight. So, yeah, those are going to be a little brutal.
The midnight one I'll be able to catch. Working swing shift, I can't wake up before 9, but I can stay up pretty late.
There you go. Yeah, no, my bedtime is promptly like 10 p.m. So, well, 10 or 11, but watching a race at midnight, going all the way till 1:30, 2 a.m., and then... Well, actually, I think Japan's on a Saturday. I think that's the race that's on a Saturday for some reason. I don't know why they do that. But I believe Japan's on a Saturday this year, so hopefully I won't have to get up early and go to work the next day, but I don't know. But I also just got a new job, so, you know, my schedule could change. I have no idea what's about to happen in the next few weeks, but I'm excited and take that challenge as it comes.
Yep. Alrighty. Anyways, after that sidetracking, we had a couple races this weekend.
Yeah, we've got 2 more IndyCar races to go through.
It's not done yet.
Yeah, first one was the Hy-Vee.com 250 at Iowa Speedway, I believe it's called. um, and this was on Saturday. So we had qualifying for both races, and then the first race on Saturday, and then the second race was on Sunday. For the first race, the top 10 in qualifying were Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, Connor Daly, Pato O'Ward, Scott McLaughlin, David Malukas, Jack Harvey, Rinus VK, Takuma Sato, and Roman Grosjean.
I've never seen a really short oval track like this before. I'm not super familiar with oval tracks overall to start with, but going from the Indy 500 to Iowa Speedway or whatever it's called it was quite an adjustment for me to get used to.
Yeah, oval tracks are definitely a different beast. And then it's a lot of people don't realize this, especially people that don't really follow racing or NASCAR or anything super closely, is that even though ovals are all pretty much ovals, there are exceptions, and some quote oval tracks are not actually shaped like ovals. And then every oval also has different like radius, like turning radius and stuff like that. So every track behaves differently. The bankings are different. There's bumps on some tracks and not on other tracks. So every track is unique, even though they're all kind of just left turns.
It's very true.
Yeah. So it's this one is a very short track, almost like old stock car style racing.
Yeah.
Where they race on short asphalt tracks. Kind of the intro. Before you get to into the NASCAR stuff, you just get these stock cars from like the 70s, with these like big black V8s and stuff like that, racing on these tracks.
Yeah, it really speaks to how versatile modern Indy cars are, that they can still continue racing on these super short tracks.
Oh yeah,
still have it be a good spectacle.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. There was a lot of overtaking in the first race, especially. But that's just kind of the nature of this short track. I mean, the laps are only 20 seconds long. And so, I mean, the guy in front is already probably about a half a lap ahead of the guy at back once they start. And so
yeah,
you only have to make up about 10 seconds to the slowest guy, which isn't that hard to do until you start lapping cars, which is why we saw all throughout the weekend there were cars that were 3, 4, 5, 6 laps down that were still, technically in the race.
Yeah, no, it was really weird. And part of the challenge, too, comes from even in the short race, there's 250 of these stupid laps that they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever tried to do 250 of the same thing over and over again, no matter how short or long it takes, that's really hard.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to lose your concentration where it is only left turns. And so, I mean, while it's still intense and you're still always in danger of crashing at an oval, I can only imagine it's very easy to have a just very momentary lapse in concentration that can give you a little bit of a moment. So yeah, that's kind of the challenge of it. The Indy 500, I can't even imagine doing just 200 laps of that, where most of it is just straight.
Yeah.
And you can't miss a single braking zone for 500 miles. That's kind of nuts. But anyway, going back to this race, Marcus Ericsson made his way to the front and fought with the leaders until he made a mistake while battling for, I think, second place. And then he kind of dropped back through the field after that. He made his mistake and then started like really falling back through the field. Looked like all of his momentum just came to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
Because I believe he ended up 8th after being in like second, third most of the race. So interesting from him where he just kind of lost all of his pace out of nowhere.
True. Although he did net 4 positions from qualifying.
He did.
So it's not a complete loss.
Yeah.
It's just not quite as good as he probably would have hoped, especially after winning the Indy 500.
Right. Yeah, Marcus Ericsson is currently the championship leader, and he was talking this week in interviews about, he was telling the press that he feels like he really needs to win at least one, if not two more races this year to secure the championship, or else he doesn't think he really has a shot. And I tend to agree with him. So, seeing him being aggressive, even if it doesn't always pay off, I think is the right way to go. Because Joseph Newgarden is so consistently strong, and Will Power is also consistently right up there this year, and so is Pato O'Ward when he's not having technical DNFs. Ericsson really needs to win another race or two to have a shot at the championship. But back to this race, Joseph Newgarden led the majority of the time. He was really the class of the field in both races. He had the fastest car, and it didn't even really look that close. Every time he came on the radio talking to his team, he just sounded so comfortable and like he was just chilling in this car.
It was really, really great to hear from him.
Yeah. So, he ran away with this one. Let's see who else did well. Jimmy Johnson ran pretty well. He actually spun out pretty early in the race.
And avoided the wall, though.
He did. He avoided the wall, and I think, managed to even stay on the lead lap. And then I think that actually caused a caution. So they had the full course yellow for basically nothing, which let him get to the back of the pack again on the lead lap. So he got pretty lucky with all those circumstances, spinning out, but staying on the lead lap and staying completely in the race. And he was really strong the entire weekend.
Jimmy Johnson's kind of always been at home on the oval tracks.
That's
kind of where it comes from.
7-time NASCAR Cup champion. Ovals are kind of his comfort zone. So
yeah.
But IndyCars are different than NASCARs for sure. But it's still really cool and impressive and awesome to see him battling literally for podiums in his second season.
It definitely helps, with that mentality game of just buckling down 250 laps, oval track, He's got the mental part probably more down than any other driver on this track when it comes to ovals.
I would say so, probably. Yeah. Who else? Pato O'Ward charged through the field later on in the race and made it up to second by the end, passing Will Power and Rinus VeeKay, who were looking very strong. But that was kind of the race. Joseph Newgarden ran away with it. We saw in both races that lap traffic plays a huge role at the track. And in some cases, the lap traffic decided who finished where. If you get in the way and there's two cars racing behind you, you where you put your car pretty much determines who goes through behind you.
We saw Roman Grosjean kind of take some the fates of some of the drivers into his own hands towards the end there.
Yeah. So second race was the Hy-Vee Salute to Farmers 300. So it was the exact same race, same track, everything. It was just 50 more laps, running 300 laps. Qualifying, the top 10 were Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, Colton Herta, Connor Daly, Takuma Sato, Scott McLaughlin, Jack Harvey, Pato O'Ward, Rinus VeeKay, and Felix Rosenqvist. So this race wasn't actually, I don't think, quite as exciting as the last race. There definitely weren't as many yellow flags. It was actually green for, I think, the first 110 laps or something like that.
Yeah, it was really clean.
Yeah. So Newgarden took the lead and pulled away early, just like he did the day before. Jimmy Johnson cut his way through the field, basically showing again that his prowess at ovals, as well as Marcus Ericsson, who, just like the day before, cut through the field up to not quite as high as the day before, but he was up in P5 and 6 for most of the race. Let's see, Pato O'Ward also made his way through the field. This time he jumped up pretty early on to about third place and settled there for the vast majority of the race. There was a lot of green flag running, lots of pitting under green. So most people were on pretty similar tire strategies, and nothing got really mixed up too much. And when there were yellows, everybody kind of just pitted on the same lap. So in terms of the strategic battle, there wasn't nearly as much of a variance as there was in the first race, but it was still all right. One of the yellow flags was caused by Kyle Kirkwood, who, while racing somebody, went 3 wide into turn 1. He was on the top, on the outside, and got into the marbles that had accumulated over the 100 and some odd laps that had occurred under green flags, and he just slid into the wall. Like, there was nothing he could have done.
Yeah, no, it's so slick, and on such a short, small track compared to some of the other ovals, there's not a whole lot of room if you misplace your car for error.
Yep. Yeah. You are, if you mess up, you've got fractions of a second to fix your mistake, or else you're pretty much spinning or understeering into the wall or hitting another car. It's the margin for error in oval tracks is ridiculously small. Speaking of which, well, I guess not error, but Joseph Newgarden, who was leading the race by a pretty comfortable margin, had a suspension failure coming out of turn 4 about 2/3 of the way through the race, and he crashed into the wall and finished his day.
Oh, yeah, that was hard to watch.
Yeah, the man had been running perfectly for the last 2 days, didn't put a foot wrong, but his right rear suspension decided to give up the ghost about 2/3 of the way through the race, and unfortunately that was his day. And so his hopes and dreams of leading the IndyCar Championship at the end of this race were dashed. He's still up there. He's still very much in the championship hunt, but this did not help.
Not nearly as high as he'd like.
Right. So after that, Pato O'Ward actually cruised to a pretty easy victory. I think he won by over 4 seconds, which is like a quarter of a lap.
Yeah, he was able to avoid a mechanical DNF.
Yeah.
So of all the people that I would have chosen to mechanically fail out of the race, it was not Newgarden.
Yep. So, O'Ward ended up winning. Let's see, at the end, Jimmy Johnson and Marcus Ericsson had a pretty feisty battle. And Jimmy Johnson actually came out on top and finished in the top 5 for the first time in his IndyCar career. Very
cool to see there.
Very good day for him. Yeah, very cool. I always think it's really cool seeing drivers that are esteemed in certain race car series go to different series and then also do well. And it's also just amazing to me. Like, I can't believe Jimmy Johnson's able to just cross over like this. I mean, obviously on the ovals he's doing better because he has the experience from NASCAR, but the fact that he can even stay competitive and finish in the top 15 somewhat consistently on even road tracks is very impressive for someone who does not have a background in road racing.
Yeah.
But the results for the Hy-Vee Salute to Farmers 300, on the podium in first place was Pato O'Ward, followed by Will Power and Scott McLaughlin. And then 4th through 6th was Scott Dixon, Jimmy Johnson, and Marcus Ericsson. 7 through 10 was Felix Rosenqvist, David Malukas, Roman Grosjean, and Takuma Sato. 11 through 15 were Callum Ilott, Colton Herta, Alex Palou, Graham Rahal, and Devlin DeFrancesco. 16 through 20 were Connor Daly, Ed Carpenter, Alexander Rossi, Rinus VK, and Jack Harvey. And then 21 through 23 were Helio Castroneves, Dalton Kellett, and Simon Pagenaud. And then we had 3 DNFs, and they were Joseph Newgarden, Kyle Kirkwood, and Christian Lundgaard.
Alrighty.
All right. So let us move on to a new segment to break things up a little bit. I've called this Zoomer Rumors. It's a work in progress. Yeah, if you have ideas and you absolutely hate Zoomer Rumors, which I'm starting to the more I say it out loud, please hit us up on Twitter at RevHang Podcast or hashtag RevHang Podcast. Leave your comments and ideas. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, this is more of a hostage situation. We'll continue calling it Zoomer Rumors until somebody suggests something else.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Yeah, so if you hate it, you should be the one to step up, because I haven't seen a single tweet from anybody yet, so...
Yeah, I would, but I don't have Twitter, so...
Yeah, that's probably smart. But yeah, if you want to possibly come up with a name for our little rumor corner of our podcast, let us know. We'd love to hear from you and interact with you guys. But anyway, so the way this is going to work, we're just going to talk about maybe every week, every other week, or whatever we decide. Just go through some rumors in the racing world kind of floating around. So maybe some spicy musical chairs in the Formula One seat world. We've got some stuff about some possible new manufacturers entering Formula One. And just stuff like that. But, I mean, you'll see how this goes pretty shortly. So, First off, let's just start out with IndyCar, since we were just there. Alex Palou, the champion from last year, is officially driving for two different teams in 2023 as of right now. Arrow McLaren SP and Chip Ganassi Racing will probably be locked in a lawsuit involving the future of the IndyCar driver. Yeah, this was kind of an interesting development over the last week. I don't know.
It really makes me realize how little I know about racing contracts.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about this, Ben?
I've heard lots of other stuff involving McLaren, but I haven't. Besides the basic rumor, I haven't looked into any further.
Right. So, so basically, after the race in Toronto, or I think it was actually before. I think it was the Saturday before Toronto. Chip Ganassi Racing, who is the current team that Alex Palou drives for, announced that Palou would be renewing his contract and driving for them in 2023. About 6 hours later, Palou posts on Twitter that was posted without his permission, and that is not the case, and he will not be driving for Chip Ganassi Racing in 2023, and nothing has been officially signed or put out yet, according to him. 7 minutes after Palou tweets that, Arrow McLaren SP tweets that Alex Palou will be driving for them in 2023. So, kind of some interesting stuff going on there. But according to Chip Ganassi Racing, Palou was already under contract and had already signed for 23. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds, because now Palou is locked into a contract in two different places. So I'm sure there's going to be a lawsuit. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But we'll just have to see, because that's pretty much all we know for right now. Nothing more has been stated.
Yeah, I'm just going to sit back and let people who are much smarter than me figure out what's going on, and I'll go from there.
Yeah. So that's kind of the complicated one. Then we got some more McLaren news, this time in F1. Daniel Ricciardo states that his intention is to stay with McLaren for the remainder of his contract, which extends through 2023. McLaren hasn't really officially come out and said anything regarding Ricciardo's statement, but it's just kind of interesting. He comes out and says that. I don't know what that means. It's really hard to know what that means.
Yeah, an interview with Lando Norris, I don't remember, it was sometime last week, I think, where they asked him directly, is like, what's going on with this? And he was very good at avoiding the question and talking about just Colton in general. So
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of funny. I'm searching through the Reddit rumor right now, and apparently from Jenna Fryer, uh, when he did his test at Portimao for F1, his lap times would have qualified him for fourth in last year's race.
Oh
If
wow.
you're looking for unsubstantiated performance metrics,
Um,
so take that with a grain of salt. But if that's true, that's pretty good.
yeah, I didn't know that. That's kind of crazy. Fourth
Yeah,
for
the
last
IndyCar
year.
subreddit is a wonderful hive of information.
Yeah, that's insane. Considering I highly doubt Pillow has ever driven that track before, or not Pillow, sorry, Herta. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, that's kind of crazy going to a track that, at the very least, he has very little experience on. Uh, in a car that he's never driven before, in a class that
yeah,
he's never driven before, and putting it what would have been fourth on the grid, which, knowing last year, was probably higher than both Lando and Daniel. That's insane.
yeah, and yeah. Granted, I'm sure the car he was driving is probably slightly different than the cars that were competing there last year.
Yeah.
They might have made some tweaks to the MC35L or whatever they're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that might have given him some time, but either way, that's pretty impressive if it's true.
Yeah, very impressive stuff. So that'll be definitely a development to watch in F1 is that McLaren seat, as I'm sure everybody who follows F1 knows by now. That's kind of the big question mark in the silly season.
Yeah,
But also another question mark that's kind of even been raised even more is that Sebastian Vettel says he intends to stay in F1, which I was not expecting.
yeah,
Like,
that's really interesting to me.
yeah, I was expecting Vettel to retire at the end of this season because I don't see him getting a drive at a team any higher than Aston Martin, and I don't see Aston Martin improving anytime soon.
Oh, brutal, but yeah, I I agree with you. He whether it's a combination of him just not really having it anymore, or Aston Martin just having a really, really terrible car. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's one or the other. Well, we definitely know Aston Martin doesn't have a great car. Uh, but that's neither here nor there. I didn't really expect him to stay in it for too much longer.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. But he does definitely want to stay through next year, I think he said. So um, that's another seat that we thought would probably be open that might not actually be open. Uh, so silly season might not be as crazy as we were all thinking it would be, but I really hope Oscar Piastri at least gets a seat next year.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking about potentially open seats, though, Latifi has had many rumors swirling around his head about whether he's gonna stick around at Williams.
Yeah, um, I don't see it happening. He's just not. He's consistently so far behind his teammate.
Yeah.
Um,
Today was another example of that. The only people he qualified in front of, we'll talk about it later, but are Sainz and Magnussen, who took engine penalties.
mm-hmm. Right. So I don't see Latifi's seat. I don't see him renewing his contract for next year. We'll see if he even makes it through the summer break. That might be a little intense, but it's happened before at Red Bull, so you never know. But Nick DeVries, the Formula E world champion, I think he won Formula E last
I
year.
think so.
Drove for Mercedes in Free Practice 1 in France, and did very well, only a couple of tenths off of George Russell. So I would say he has proved that he can drive the car. I mean, he's definitely done practice sessions in the past. So I would say for the Williams seat right now, I would say Latifi's out, and it's either going to be De Vries or Piastri in. And depending on Williams' relationship with Mercedes. I don't know if it's as strong as it was before the Williams family actually stepped down. But if that relationship's still there, then Mercedes might have some say. And in that case, I would say De Vries is probably more likely to go to Williams.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards De Vries. I think he has a little more maturity than Piastri after, a full stint in Formula E. Not to say that that's really anywhere close to Formula 1, but he looked pretty good in FP1.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he'd probably be a good pairing with Albon at Williams, at least for a few seasons while he kind of gets his feet under him.
Yeah, I'd say so. So, one more. We've got Audi looking to purchase a majority stake in Sauber, which would almost assuredly bump the Alfa Romeo sponsorship in favor of Audi. So that would be an interesting development if Alfa Romeo ended up not in F1 anymore just because a bigger company said, hey, we'll give them more money.
Yeah, I wonder what that would mean for Ferrari too, because Ferrari and Alfa Romeo have a pretty good relationship, I'd say.
Yeah.
At least they have in the past. So I wonder if that would stay or if that would shake something up.
Well, I would bet that if Audi took that majority stake in the team, they'd probably develop their own engines.
And then Porsche's developing an engine, right?
Yeah, so that's the
Wasn't
other.
that the rumor?
That's the other kind of rumor-ish. It's not. I didn't even put it on here because it's almost assuredly confirmed that Porsche and Red Bull will be partnering up in 2026. I don't know what that's going to look like. Whether Porsche's just the engine manufacturer and Red Bull's still the team, or kind of what it sounds like to me is they're kind of just going to go 50-50 into it, and they're going to basically just create this super team, which, knowing Porsche's racing pedigree and then Red Bull's desire to win all the time, I don't. That team is going to be really, really hard to beat.
Yeah, and I'm thinking if Porsche does come in and offer engines to customers, I'm thinking Audi would probably go with a Porsche engine.
That's possible.
Because, same company.
Yeah, they're both Volkswagen.
Same parent company.
Yeah. Both under Volkswagen.
That makes the most sense to me.
That's possible.
Which in that case, that would make Haas probably the de facto kind of like second team for Ferrari, or at least maybe improve their relationship with them.
Yeah, well, I think Ferrari's kind of in trouble if they can't figure out their engine reliability problems because, I mean, how long is Haas going to sit there and let their engines blow up every 2 races?
Yeah.
They could very easily switch to... I would switch to a Renault engine if I were them, but that's just me.
I mean, clearly the Renault engine is actually performing really well for their 2 drivers, so who knows?
Yeah, and Renault's probably desperate for a customer team because they don't have one at the moment. So they could use that extra money, I'm sure, help them out. So I could see that happening. Haas maybe switching to Renault engines. That would be kind of interesting.
That would be a shakeup.
Yeah.
What I really want is I just need Ford back in the game. If we could get another Ford engine, that would be so cool.
Yeah, if you get Ford back in the game. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see an American car company enter the sport. Whether that's like Ford or Dodge. I could see Dodge entering the sport. Like, honestly, that would be a sick team.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
They would have to get just the biggest personality they could for their principal and just, do the Dodge version of F1.
Yeah, they'd probably go under the SRT name if I were to guess.
SRT or Hellcat Racing or who knows.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. That was our Zoomer rumors. Gosh. Please, somebody.
Please give us social media engagement.
Please.
This is a threat.
I'm not asking for much here. All right, let's move on to Formula 1. Talk about this. It was the French Grand Prix this week. In Le Castellet, France. Pretty hot out there. It was about 90, like we said earlier in the podcast.
As we discussed, yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of the story, just like it was in Austria. The tires were not doing well. They were going off way earlier than people were expecting. But let's just go through qualifying real quick. Top 10 for context were Leclerc, Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Alonso, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, and Ocon. As the race got started, Leclerc got a pretty good start and got the field in the first couple of laps. Hamilton got another good start, and Verstappen got kind of a mediocre start. So they ended up battling into turn one. Perez got a pretty poor start and ended up in fourth behind Hamilton after the first turn. Norris also had a bad start and dropped back a few places. There were actually quite a few bad starts this race, and actually most of the races in France for some reason. I don't know why that was, but in the F2 races, there were in the sprint race, I think, the F2 sprint, there were 3 people that stalled on the start. And so they had to abort the race because they had too many cars on the grid. They couldn't get them out of the way in time before the next lap.
Goodness gracious.
So,
yeah, Magnussen had a great start, though. He absolutely just torpedoed himself up the field, and it ended up not mattering that much because of a bad timing on a safety car and a strategy that didn't really go along with that very well. But
yeah, unfortunately, Haas kind of fumbled on the strategy this week. It wasn't really their fault because the safety car kind of threw a wrench in everything, but I mean, they went for it. I'll give them that.
They definitely tried something different.
Yeah.
And it definitely didn't work for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. Maybe next time.
Maybe next time. You never know. But so later on in the first lap, Ocon made contact with Yuki Tsunoda and spun him out. So Ocon got a 5-second penalty for that. I don't know. I think it was pretty deserved. I mean, Ocon didn't do it on purpose, obviously, but he messed up and took Tsunoda out of the race, essentially. So,
yeah.
I would say
that was unfortunate to see.
Yeah. After that, Verstappen closed up to Leclerc as the next couple of laps played out and stayed within Leclerc's DRS range for first 15, 16 laps. Probably, it looked like to me that he was just saving fuel and saving his tires a little bit. But, so Sainz cut his way through the field and made it all the way up to P9 from P19 after only 17 laps. So, driving the wheels off that Ferrari. Making waves.
Driving the wheels off your Ferrari. Yeah. Anyways, continue.
On lap 17, Max Verstappen pit for hard tires. And then the next lap, I think everybody thought that Charles Leclerc was going to pit to cover off the undercut. But he didn't. He stayed out and ended up spinning the car and hitting the barriers and ending his race.
Yeah, that was hard. That was hard to watch.
Yeah, very, very hard to watch.
It looked like he was honestly having a pretty easy breezy race. Obviously Verstappen was on him, but through those corners it didn't look like he was really that attainable for Verstappen to pass him unless he got close enough and was able to make it to a straight.
Yeah, he wasn't pushing that hard, it didn't seem like, but he just gave it a little too much gas. I think so. He said initially it sounded like there was another problem with his throttle getting stuck open. But after the race, in interviews, he said that he just made a mistake. So I don't know if that was Binotto telling him to save Ferrari's face, or if he legit just made a mistake. It's kind of hard to say, but
who's really to say? Because I mean, last race, you remember he had throttle problems too, because brake-by-wire can be finicky if you don't have everything exactly perfect.
Right.
Or throttle-by-wire, rather. So, who knows?
Yeah. So that caused a safety car, and the rest of the field went into the pits under the safety car conditions. Verstappen was far enough ahead when the safety car came out that he was able to maintain his lead. So on the restart, Verstappen just drove off into the sunset, and that was pretty much it.
He just went on a road trip.
Yep,
and
Sunday
left everyone
drive.
else behind.
Yeah. He had no problem once Leclerc was out of the picture. Carlos Sainz, the absolute animal, made his way up to P4 before being told to pit late in the race for fresh tires.
Ferrari pit wall strategy strikes again.
Oh, man. So, basically, to explain this situation... Well, actually, we'll talk about that whole thing later.
Yeah, we're going to need a longer conversation about what happened and what led up to that.
Yeah. So after Sainz pit, we had Ocon passing Ricciardo for P8. Carlos Sainz made his way back up to P5 again by the end of the race. Russell and Perez made contact going into an overtaking zone, and Russell whined over the radio for like 3 laps calling for a penalty because Perez didn't make the corner, even though Russell just ran into him and shoved him off the track.
Yeah, until Dad Toto came on the radio and told him to buckle down.
Yeah. So there was that, and then eventually Russell was able to overtake Perez with 2 or 3 laps left to go, I think.
On a really weird restart after a VSC.
Yeah.
It almost looked like Perez just stopped in the middle of the track for a little bit.
Yeah. There was Guan Yu Zhou pulled over to the side of the track with Ferrari engine failure, presumably. And so there was a virtual safety car while they cleaned that up. So what ended up happening, according to Perez, was they actually got the wrong message sent to them on his steering wheel. And so it was basically telling him for like a split second to maintain the delta, while at the same as it was telling him that, it was telling Russell that it was a green flag. And so I guess it took a second for that to fix itself, and so by the time it fixed itself, it was already too late, and Russell was past Perez. But that's what they said happened. But that could be Red Bull just trying to blame everything but themselves. I don't know what happened. It was super weird. Perez just kind of stopped on the track for a second, and Russell's just like, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah, hold on, give me a sec. I really want to look up. Did Joe end up finishing this race?
No.
No, okay. And he didn't finish the last race.
No. Nope.
Right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, because he didn't finish Silverstone.
Let me go to RevHang.com and look at the results of all of the races.
Oh, thank you very much. That's much easier than me just looking it up.
Yeah.
Separately.
There we go.
I just want to count how many DNFs Joe has in a row so far.
Ooh, I don't have DNFs listed. I just have points finishes, so that's going to be a problem. Yeah, I don't know how many DNFs it is. Maybe we can... No, I want to look it up now.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I'm desperately interested.
Okay, I've got...
Oh, no, it has retirements.
1, 2, 3, 4...
5?
Yeah, it's 5 retirements.
He did finish in Austria. Good for him.
I guess he did, yeah.
And in Canada. He got points in Canada. How did I miss that?
I don't know.
Oh, that was when I was in Michigan, that's why.
Oh, well, there you go. That's right. Yeah, so Guan Yu Zhou has DNF'd 5 times this year out of, 12 races? Yeah, something like that. That's some, 1970s numbers right there.
Yeah, that is terrible. And the worst thing is, they haven't really ever been any of his mistakes. He's either been crashed into or a victim of Ferrari reliability.
Yeah, the only mistake I can think of was he cut across Pierre Gasly in the sprint race in Imola and spun out and ended his sprint race. But then he ended up finishing the actual race the next day. But I can't think of a legitimate race-ending mistake that Joe has made this year. So I think he's having a really good season, regardless of the DNFs. Like, he's showing that he's a good driver.
Man, I can't wait to see how good of a driver he is next season.
Yeah.
Or maybe if he's still at Alfa Romeo and not fed up with it by the time they get maybe some different power plants from a different manufacturer.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully they can figure out their reliability issues. I mean, it's all just kind of on Ferrari. But we'll see. The race ended up finishing Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell on the podium.
Yeah.
All right, and then fastest lap went to Carlos Sainz, and driver of the day also went to Carlos Sainz.
He really needed it after that race.
Oh, he did, and he deserved it. So he got over 40% of the vote for driver of the day. I don't think I've ever seen a driver get 40%.
Well, when you go from 20th on the grid up to 5th after Ferrari pit wall strategy strikes, that's no small feat.
Yeah, let's get into that. Speaking of Ferrari pit wall strategy.
Oh, man. Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah, at the... We'll just go through Sainz's, because Leclerc's race only lasted 18 laps anyway. But, so Sainz's strategy... He started in 19th place on the hard tires when most of the other people started on mediums. So he was able to go a little bit longer. He didn't go longer because he boxed when everybody pit under safety car. But then everybody else was on hards while he was on mediums, and he already had his hard tire stint out of the way, so he didn't need to do another hard tire stint. So they put him on mediums on lap 18, and then, basically told him to go to the end of the race on that set of tires while everybody else was on hards.
On a notably hot day, on a notably punishing track for tires.
Yeah. So he cuts through the field, and he's actually doing a very good job at saving his tires, it looks like.
I thought he was going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think he would have been able to do it. So basically once they got to about lap 35, I think it was a 56 lap race. Once you get to about lap 35, you're thinking, okay, if they're going to pit him again, they need to do it now so that he has time to make up the positions again.
Yep.
Because if they don't pit him now and they wait too long, then he's going to lose all of these positions in one of the longest pit lanes on the I think the longest pit lane on the calendar.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in the pit lane championship, but we're looking at at least a 35-second pit.
Yeah, so you're losing 35 seconds in the pits, which is very significant. So you don't want to pit if you don't have to. So they left him out, and it was early 40s. It's lap 42, I think. He's racing Perez for P4, P3 or P4.
I think it was George Russell.
Well, he was in there too. He was right in there with both of them. But basically, 2 laps before that, he was like, all right, we need to box if we're going to box. And Ferrari's like, nah, stay out. We're going to go to the end. He's like, okay. And so he stays out. He starts racing everybody, gets past Perez and Russell. And as he's racing Perez, passing the entrance to the pit lane, Ferrari's like, okay, box now. He's like...
what are you... No!
He's like, no, I'm literally racing Checo right now. So he passes Checo, goes around another lap, and then they tell him to box. And so he does. And so it's lap 43. There's 13 laps left in the race, and he's about to essentially get a 35-second penalty. Oh, and on top of that, he had a 5-second penalty at that point too, for an unsafe release after the first pit stop, which just more Ferrari-isms. So he went into the pits, served his 5-second penalty, had his pit stop, and so he probably lost 35 to 40 seconds on the track. And I don't remember if they put him on mediums or if they put him on softs for the last.
They put him on mediums. I thought they would have put him on softs. You know, a faster tire, considering you have so few laps left.
Yeah, that would have made sense to me too, but it's Ferrari, so we'll just go with it. So they put him on mediums, and he absolutely flew for the rest of the race. He basically set fastest lap every single lap he finished. And made his way finally back up to P5 to finish out the race. But I think it could have been a podium if Ferrari didn't hit him again.
Yeah, no, I think he could have continued to gain time on Hamilton and put distance between him and Russell. Yeah. And eventually that 5-second penalty they were worried about wouldn't have mattered. Russell and Perez were busy losing time duking out between themselves.
Yeah. It made no sense.
Yeah. I had a friend who had never seen an F1 race before. And I was trying to teach him, and this is a really bad race to try to teach somebody about tire strategy in F1.
Yeah, not.
Especially with Ferrari making all these decisions. It was like, so you're talking, and it was like, oh yeah, and like right here, Ferrari will probably do this, and then they don't, and then you hear the radio conversations, and you're like, okay, maybe next race I'll be able to tell you how it actually works, because this is absolutely out of their minds.
This is not it, yeah. Yeah, so I don't even know, man. That's Ferrari just absolutely had a meltdown today. It's so hard because like it's like they have such a good car. Like Ferrari and Mercedes are so much closer to Red Bull's pace now than they were 4 or 5 races ago. Everybody's right there. I think Mercedes just kind of had an off week, and this wasn't really their track, even though they did get a double podium. But I mean, both those cars at Red Bull's pace, the championship can still go really anybody's way. But Ferrari just continues to shoot themselves in the foot. And, yeah.
If there's any race for them to really have to get Sainz's strategy right, it's when Leclerc crashes out a third of the way into the race, and now Sainz has to battle his way up on a U set of medium tires. That's when they should have been firing on all cylinders. You know, maybe grab some of Leclerc's engineers, get them on it too. But clearly that didn't happen.
Yeah. I don't remember who was saying this, but I was watching some like interviews early on in the week. They were saying that they thought that Leclerc was ready to win a world championship, but Ferrari wasn't.
Yeah. No, Ferrari is clearly still in a midfield mindset.
Yeah, they don't see, to win world championships as a constructor, you have to be perfect pretty much every week.
Yeah, this is why Mercedes got so many championships.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Sure, they had the fastest cars, but they were also a team that was just so prepared to win as a team with strategy and not just pace.
Yeah, Mercedes has always been known for having really good strategy and making very good, even when the calls are risky, they tend to pay off for Mercedes. So it's always a pretty good bet. Whatever they're doing, they've always been on top of it, and that's why they won so many years in a row. And you could see when they messed up, they lost races. Like one of the big classic ones is Germany 2019. When they messed up one of Hamilton's pit stops, and Bottas ended up crashing, I think, that race, and even Lewis spun out a couple times. He finished though, and I think Lewis finished P9 or something like that, and that was it.
Yeah, or Baku 2020.
Yep, Baku 2020. Yeah.
But in the past 3 years, only being able to point really to a couple races.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of team that Ferrari needs to be, and they are so far from that right now.
Because I can point to more than half of their races on times they've messed up this season.
Yeah.
So I mean, honestly, if Ferrari had half the reliability issues and half of the strategy mistakes, I think they'd be leading the championship right now.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, we're two 20-something armchair podcasters with very minimal racing experience between the two of us, but maybe Ferrari's hiring for pit strategists?
Hey, my
I'd be willing
door's
to throw
open.
my hat in that ring at that point.
Yeah, for real. I mean, I did just get another job, but I would happily change over if Ferrari's looking for some people. I'm open. Just hit me up on Twitter, I guess. You can
Again,
let me know
engagement,
about the
please.
name you want for the rumor thing too.
Yeah. You don't even have to pay us that much, please. We just want to help.
Yeah, we're just there for the ride, along for the ride, there for the experience. Get the Tifosi juice running in our blood.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Ferrari woes this week. Mercedes had a very good race. They would have finished I guess probably third and fourth if Leclerc didn't crash.
Yeah.
So just even that, just extremely good race for Mercedes. Very positive result.
That's really good progress. Yeah.
Yeah, Hamilton has now finished on the podium like 4 times in a row, I think. I think every race since Canada.
And he just seems a lot happier with the car. Both of them do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they had an upgrade in Canada or around there sometime. But it seems like after Baku, like Lewis has been really comfortable and happy with the car and where it's at, like you said.
Yeah.
So, and then George Russell also is kind of growing into his own. I mean, he was kind of whining a little bit this race, but I mean, that's what race drivers do.
So yeah, he finished third, so clearly he's not lacking for pace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's not afraid to voice his opinions on the car and the direction he thinks it needs to go, and I'm sure he's helping the development just as much as Lewis is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Mercedes is kind of chugging along, running on all cylinders. And I would not be surprised if they started to challenge Ferrari for the second spot in the championship pretty soon.
Yeah, and honestly, if this was last year with last year's cars, but the same driver lineup, I think Mercedes probably would have been, not to slight Bottas at all. He's clearly a really good driver. But I think if it had been Russell and Hamilton and this team dynamic last year and last year's cars, Mercedes, I think, would have been just about untouchable.
Yeah, I'd say so too. Kind of like 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, really.
Yeah. So, and then on the Red Bull side of the coin, Sergio Perez, while he was looking very, very fast early on in the season, has kind of dropped off to where he was last season in the last couple of races, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not quite on Max's pace, or he hasn't been in the last couple of races. I don't know how much of that is the track or his car or what the deal is, but from what I've heard and rumors through the grapevine and then just things taken from interviews that Checo has said, it seems like Red Bull's kind of going down the same path that they did with the last generation of cars, and they're really designing it around what Max likes and Max's driving style. And so it's really hard for Perez to adapt to that, and so he was better earlier on in the season because I mean the car was more to his driving style and less to Max's, but now they've kind of moved towards Verstappen's direction, and I think it's kind of hurting Sergio Perez a little bit.
Yeah, and yeah, I wondered what Red Bull's plans for him really are. They talk about, oh yeah, Perez is in a place to win a world championship, that we're not going to stop him. But it seems to me that they're kind of like last year, they're going to continue to more use him as a tool for Verstappen's success.
Yeah.
Than anything.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's looking like. So.
But, if Perez is happy with that, then more power to him. Take, a more partnership role and just try to help the team more than anything. But I would like him to maybe be a bit more competitive for the championship.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see both Red Bulls fighting each other. But I don't know. I don't know if that's ever really realistically going to happen. Verstappen versus Perez for the championship. Max is just so fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see what else. Fernando Alonso finished fifth or sixth. Yeah.
I believe it's sixth. Yeah, really kind of snuck up quietly in there. Just had a consistent race and solid strategy all the way through.
Yeah.
And I think sixth, fifth is probably ringing about all that car's got. But against Mercedes and Red Bull and Ferrari, that's not a bad place to be in. I believe they just took fourth in the constructors over McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever they're feeding their drivers and their cars seems to be working.
Yeah, Alonso and Ocon are both doing really well. Alonso is just, it seems like every race he's showing why he's a 2-time world champion, and he's still got it. In this race, his team was telling him that Norris was approaching him behind him, and Alonso was like, "Oh, I know. I'm letting him stay behind me so he ruins his tires in my dirty air." I was like, "What a legend!"
Something experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just such that. Yeah, like you said, you only get that from experience. That's all of his 340 some odd races coming out.
Yeah.
He knows what to do to interact with the other drivers without even being in the same area on the track as they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So he had a great race. What did you think about McLaren this race?
I think I would say it was a positive overall. They both scored points. I think Ricciardo should come away from this weekend feeling good. He was closer to Lando on pace. One thing I will say is Lando did have debris lodged in his car for half the race, which we found out later, so that could explain why he was a little slower. But I don't know. I think McLaren is just still kind of in that middle of the midfield slump right now.
Yeah.
They're not where they want to be, that's for sure.
No. For a team that thought they'd be fighting Ferrari, and then Ferrari decided that they wanted to fight for the Constructors' Championship all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're still finding their place and where they need to be.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so that kind of wraps up the French Grand Prix. Let's go through, is there any interesting movement in the championship? Perez moves, I think, back up to third. Did he? No, he was in third. That's right. But he's only 7 points behind Leclerc now. So, Perez and Leclerc are pretty tight together. Verstappen's still way out in front, ahead by 63 points, looks like.
Yeah, that's a pretty good buffer.
That is a very large buffer. And then George Russell is only 1 point behind Carlos Sainz. So they're in fourth and fifth. Like I said, if Mercedes starts performing and Ferrari doesn't fix their problems, then Mercedes could get right back in this, because Russell could pass Sainz here in a sec. And then Lewis Hamilton isn't far behind them either. So
yeah, I think Hamilton and Russell are both probably going to move up at the same rate. The Mercedes cars just seem super consistent, and they seem like they're really well matched. So any progress that Russell makes, I think Hamilton will very closely follow, and vice versa. So
yeah,
hopefully Carlos Sainz can get his strategy and his car figured out, because otherwise I think he's going to drop down to sixth pretty rapidly.
Yeah. Looking at the battle between McLaren and Alpine this year, It doesn't actually, the constructors doesn't represent what the drivers is kind of looking like here. Lando Norris is in 7th place with 70 points, ahead of Esteban Ocon with 56 and Fernando Alonso with 37. And then Daniel Ricciardo, Lando's teammate, is all the way down in 12th place with only 19 points.
Below Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah, below one of the Haas drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ricciardo's really, really not doing what he needs to do in that car. Like, I don't think I've actually looked at his championship standings in a while, but 19 points after...
Seeing him at 19, yeah.
19 points.
Especially behind Magnussen.
Yeah, that's...
Magnussen took a year-long break from F1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, he's 51 points behind his teammate. I guess that's kind of similar to where Perez is, but at the same time, Perez also has 163 points. 51 points is a lot different when you're under 100 points for both drivers.
The percentage
It's
changes.
the percentage change, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, if McLaren has any way to drop Ricciardo, I don't see them not doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. And then in the constructors, I don't think there was too much movement other than maybe Alpine jumping over McLaren. Everything else looks about the same. Ferrari is 82 points behind Red Bull.
And Mercedes is only 44 points behind Ferrari.
Yeah. So
that's a single good weekend for Mercedes, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot can change where you're still only about halfway through the season, so lots of racing to come. But that wraps up our Formula One section. Let's get to the overtake of the week. I gave this one to Jimmy Johnson as he overtook Jack Harvey and Devlin DeFrancesco in the first race in Iowa. It was a double overtake around the outside of turn 1 and 2, and I didn't think that was possible.
No, not at such a small track.
Yeah, so I didn't. The amount the amount of skill and trust that you have to have in your car to stick to the track around the outside was just crazy. So I gave it to him. Very, very impressive stuff from Jimmy Johnson this weekend.
Yeah.
All right. Pit stop championship. In first place, we had Max Verstappen in Red Bull Racing. So they take the 25 points. After that, running off the podium was Pierre Gasly and Daniel Ricciardo. And then the rest of the top 10 was Kevin Magnussen, Zhou Guanyu, Valtteri Bottas, Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, Mick Schumacher, and Nicholas Latifi. So
a rare trip to the points for Nicholas Latifi.
Yeah, that's probably the only way he's gonna score points this season, likely. Unfortunately.
Brutal.
But yeah, so looking at these times, the fastest pit stop from pit entry to pit exit was 35.2 seconds.
Yeah.
And the second fastest was 35.9. So Red Bull absolutely killed it on that one.
Yeah, a track where pit strategy is very important.
Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah, it looks like 36 seconds was probably about what you should expect on a pit stop, a good pit stop. That's a really long pit lane.
It was torturous to watch at some points.
Yeah, you just like watching all these cars drive by, and you just see the car just slowly driving down the lane. And they even extended it. They said they extended the pit lane this year from last year. So,
yeah.
Even longer. But in the pit stop championship, not too much changes. Perez is still very much on top. Verstappen does close some ground to him, though. As Perez didn't even score points in this week, which I don't know if that's happened yet. I'll have to look. But yeah, looks like they kind of fumbled his pit stop a little bit. Constructors also kind of same story. McLaren jumps back ahead of Ferrari though, so McLaren is now in second place again in the pit stop championship. And then Haas. Haas did have a good week. They scored 12 points, which is a lot for them. Well, they scored 14 actually total for the constructors. Very good week. Very good week considering they now have a total of 17 points and are still in last place.
It's okay. They're first place in our hearts.
Yeah, we'll give them that. All right. Predictions for the French Grand Prix that we made last week.
They were very bad.
Well, okay. Can we just appreciate what would have happened to my predictions if Leclerc didn't crash? Because
okay, I didn't see that before.
If Leclerc didn't crash, I would have gotten every single prediction right, and Sainz would have finished 6th as my dark horse. Yeah. I am so upset.
Wow. Okay, never mind. You win.
But no, my top 5 was wrong because Leclerc binned it. So
yeah, you had a -1 offset.
Yep. So the top 5 this race were Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell, Perez, and Sainz. I chose Leclerc, Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell, Perez, and then Sainz as my dark horse.
Yep, and then I had Verstappen, Leclerc, Ocon, Hamilton, Russell, and Perez. Well, Ocon didn't do quite as well as I had hoped. But at least I had Hamilton and Russell in the top 5. Yeah.
Yep. There you go. And we both had Hamilton beating Russell, which did end up happening, so we can text our buddy who said that wouldn't happen later.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to absolutely slap him around with that one.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. And then fastest lap, I guessed Verstappen.
I guess Leclerc.
It ended up going to Carlos Sainz. And then driver of the day also went to Carlos Sainz, but I said Ocon.
And I chose the other Frenchman, Gasly. It was a sad day for France.
Yeah.
But it was also a sad day for a lot of teams and a lot of drivers. So.
Yeah. Okay. The Hungarian Grand Prix next week. I believe you went first last week, so I'll go first this week. I am going to. Oh man, this is so hard. Now it's like, how can I bet on Ferrari? I just can't.
You've just broken our hearts so many times.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna say Verstappen, followed by Perez, followed by Sainz, 3rd, and then I'll say. I'll say Leclerc 4th. I'll say Hamilton 5th, and then Russell is my dark horse. Oh, I hate it, but all right, we'll roll with it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think anybody's stopping Verstappen at the Hungaroring. How do you say that? Hungaroring. Okay. So I'm gonna have Verstappen in first. I'm putting. I'm gonna put Hamilton second. I think he's got a lot of momentum. I'm going to put Perez 3rd, Russell 4th. I think the Ferraris will either finish really well or not at all. So in 5th, I'm going to have Fernando Alonso. And then as my dark horse, as my dark horse, I'll put Leclerc, just in case.
Okay. All right, fastest lap.
Just to hedge my bets.
Fastest lap, Verstappen.
Yeah, it's going to be Verstappen.
Okay. Driver of the day. Let me see. You know what? I'm actually going to say Leclerc because, I have a feeling something bad's going to happen in qualifying. He's going to have to make it up in the race.
All right. I'm going to say Hamilton. I'm going to say he doesn't qualify well and then has a great recovery drive to podium.
Okay. Wow. All right, those will be interesting predictions.
You got to keep it interesting. If you're going to get it wrong, it might as well be entertaining.
Exactly. So All right. Now, okay, it has been a long episode. But do you have anything else you would like to add before we sign off for the evening, Ben?
No, I'm hungry. Let's go get some dinner.
Sounds good. That sounds fantastic. So without further ado, thank you everybody so much for listening to this episode of RevHang. If you enjoyed it, leave a like or rating on the platform you listened on. It really helps us out. If you'd like to follow our thoughts and opinions on the motorsport world, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at RevHang Media. If you have any thoughts or questions about racing or even about us, post a tweet at #RevHangPodcast and we may feature your question on the next show. Also, please post something at #RevHangPodcast about the horrific Zoomer rumored thing. I know.
Or don't. Maybe you support it.
Maybe, yeah. So it's gonna be Zoomer rumors as long as you guys don't say anything. So there you go. You can follow Ben on Instagram at BenjiMeetsWorld and or myself at 2n_squared. While you're at it, go check out our website, RevHang.com, where you can find a calendar of upcoming races, updated standings for the racing series we talk about, along with our often very incorrect predictions for the F1 season. We'll return in a week to talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix, but until then, I have been Nathan.
And I've been Ben. Make sure to take your allergy medicine, folks, and use your sunscreen.
Have a good summer, and thanks for hanging out, guys.
See you later.